You are listening to the Spactastic Mysteries podcast. We are continuing Anna Gale Lyne's second novel in the Jaguar and Peacock series, Without Clearance. Colonel Jessa Masters, a fearless and seasoned federal agent for the Intergalactic Intelligence Bureau, IIB, commands the SpaceVessel Liberty with unparalleled precision. Alongside her partner and husband, Nate Masters, a skilled investigator with a sharp intellect, she has faced some of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. But nothing could prepare them for their next mission, a personal one. When a fellow federal agent is found brutally murdered aboard the Liberty, the crime scene is not just a professional setback, it's a chilling threat that hits too close to home. As Jessa and Nate dig deeper, they uncover clues that suggest this murder is no random act of violence. It's part of a decades-old vendetta, a sinister plot aimed at dismantling Jessa's entire family. Without Clearance is a high-stakes, action-packed space thriller filled with twists, conspiracies, and a powerful tale of love and loyalty in the face of overwhelming danger. This is Episode 5, Clues. If you have not subscribed, do so now, and hit the bell to be notified of new episodes.
I agree, Jag. Baker should be in jail for attempting to blackmail us. Clearly, he was insubordinate, but I started, setting a plate on each mat around the rectangular dining room table. It seated 6 comfortably. It could accommodate 8, if necessary. Our family had expanded to 6, so instead of having too much room, we would have just enough. But what? Nate required, walking behind me, putting napkins and silverware by each plate. He had become quite a domestic. His domestic side started to emerge when I was bedridden after the crash that killed Ben and Joshua. Nate and Joey insisted on taking turns sitting by my side during the whole recovery process. At the time, it was annoying. Now, my annoyance turned to gratitude that they loved and cared about me that much. But I am not convinced that he is involved in the drug ring. He could be involved, but he seems too obvious a suspect. And if it was him, don't you think that Brooklyn would have figured that out early on like we did? I stood behind my seat at the right end of the table, running my fingers through my dark hair. But you are right. He does know something about it. The front doors slid open. Remy and Reggie flew through the living room to my side. "What's for dinner, Mom?" Reggie asked, thrusting out her bottom lip. "I am so hungry I can eat a horse." "Where have you two been?" I demanded, hands on my hips, surveying the splats of dirt on their clothes, face, hands and hair. I chided, "It's almost 1800 hours. "Playing in the garden," Reggie answered in a low tone, casting me an angelic smile. "Dinner's almost ready. You two, go get cleaned up," I instructed them, heading into the kitchen. I turned on my heel and called after them, "And you had better not have trampled my vegetables." To work off stress, my previous ship's doctor, Dr. Weston, encouraged me to take up a hobby. I chose to start a vegetable garden. Most people were shocked to find out that their hard-as-nail colonel actually gardened. It just didn't fit their image of me. I emerged with a pitcher of soda and a large, wooden bowl of salad just as the doors chimed. "Come in," I shouted in that direction. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Joey and Colin walk into the living room as I set the pitcher and bowl on the table. I rushed into the kitchen. I grabbed a pair of potholders from the counter and pulled open the oven door. I pulled out a large pan out of the oven, where it had been warming. Carrying it into the dining room, I placed the potholders down in the middle of the table, then set the pan on top. "If everyone will join me at the table," I bellowed, "we can get started." Joey, Colin and the kids gathered in the living room, chatting with Nate. It was obvious from the way they continued to talk that they hadn't heard me, or if they did, they ignored me. I put my fingers in my mouth and blew, producing a loud whistle. All eyes focused on me. "If you aren't at this table in 30 seconds, I will throw this food out, and you will get nothing," I warned them. 1, 2, 3, 4, I began the count. As they scurried to the table and took their seats, Reggie whispered to Remy, "Don't worry, she says that every night." "Has she ever done it?" came his response. "No," Reggie assured him, smirking. "That's because I've never got to 30, I interrupted, taking Reggie's hand at my right and Joey's at my left in mine. I looked across the table and said, "There's salad." Motioning to the glass pan on the potholders, I continued, "And that is some concoction that the chef calls red chicken." "Just as long as it isn't your cooking," Joey remarked, scooping up some of the salad with the tongs and transferring it to her plate. "I mean, Jessa is quite talented when it comes to tracking down the bad guys and solving crimes, but sandwiches are the extent of her cooking expertise," Joey told Remy. "You can't cook," Remy exclaimed, tilting his head to gaze at me. He apprised me, my mom's cooking was the worst. I responded, laying a clump of lettuce on Reggie's plate, "I can cook. It just isn't always edible." Everyone at the table laughed. "Let's just say my talents lie elsewhere," I maintained. I smiled at Remy. "It must be tough to be thrown into a new family so quickly after your mother dies." But he seemed to be doing okay. I made a mental note to talk with him about it before he went to bed. "The chef on board, the one who made your turkey sandwich this afternoon, usually cooks our meals, or I make sandwiches," I advised him. I caught him staring at the overseer, a long black device that looked similar to a 21 SUP/SUP Century television remote control. The screen appeared from within the device whenever someone activated it. Right now it displayed a picture of Command Central. "What's that?" he asked, pointing at it. "You know how I told you that Nate and I command this vessel?" I inquired after swallowing a bite of my salad. He nodded, so I continued, "Colin is the head of security. For all three of us to be having dinner together, we have to be able to monitor ship activities in case of an emergency. That's what that is." I shifted in my seat to see it. "We can monitor what is happening in Command Central and even interact with the crew, if we need to," I apprised him. "Who's that sitting in the center chair?" he wondered. "That's Elizabeth Meadows," I returned, gathering another bite of salad on my fork, "my science officer and second in command." "She doesn't seem to like being in charge," he commented, gesturing toward the way the redhead rested her chin on her fist and stared out into space. "Normally she's begging me to give her more time in charge of Command Central." "She is probably just tired," I assured him, making a note to schedule a meeting with Major Meadows tomorrow. Something was definitely off with her, and I wanted to nip it in the bud before it blossomed any further. I focused on my salad again. I put my fork to my mouth. Crash. Thud. I watched as the eyes of everyone at the table stared at the picture of Command Central. I moved my head to see what had caught their interest. Elizabeth Meadows laid on the floor, apparently unconscious. Her gold-rimmed glasses landed right above her head. They were twisted, and the lens broke. Officers hovered over her. I tapped my comlet twice, indicating a medical emergency. "Dr. Manning, this is Colonel Masters," I spoke into the comlet. "Major Meadows requires immediate medical attention in Command Central." "On my way, Colonel," came the doctor's response. I reached across the table and grabbed the overseer. I held it up, pressing the talk button. "Okay, people, Dr. Manning is on his way." "Major Genova," I told the graying dark-skinned officer manning the communication station behind the command chair, "please take command. And I expect the rest of you to return to your posts." The officers dressed in black flight coveralls scurried back to their stations as Major Genova marched over to the command chair. He smoothed out his coveralls with his hand, then sat down. "All right, people, you heard the colonel. Less gawking, more working," he commanded, making an elaborate gesture to show that he was now in charge. In the background, I could see Dr. Manning enter Command Central. "Doctor, when you know something," I charged the doctor, "please let me know." I closed my eyes briefly. "Lord," I muttered under my breath, "please let Major Meadows be okay." When I opened my eyes, I took a deep breath and asked, "What happened?" 1 minute she was fine. The next minute, she was passed out on the ground. I put the overseer down and folded my hands under my chin. "What did you all see?" I addressed my family. No one was eating, just thinking about what they had saw. After a few seconds of silence, I caught Nate's gaze and prompted, "Jag?" She drank a glass of water, then fell out of the chair, Nate answered, giving me his, "There's definitely something suspicious about this" look. "You suspect that the water was tampered with? That is the most logical explanation, don't you think?" Nate expressed, picking up his fork. He stabbed several pieces of lettuce, putting the fork to his mouth. I glanced back at the scene. Shards of glass sparkled on the floor around where Dr. Manning worked on Major Meadows. She shattered the glass when she fell, but I bet the lab can test the pieces. I followed suit and picked up my fork, taking it to my salad. I collected the lettuce on the fork. Once Joey, Colin and the kids saw us eating again, they returned to their own meals. "Only a quick-acting drug would have taken effect that soon," Nate remarked, sipping his glass of soda. "No more shop talk, you two," Colin chastised, reaching over to cut a piece of red chicken. He amended, "Let's finish dinner and then we will go to the infirmary and pump Dr. Manning for information." In the meantime, we finished our meal in silence. But at the rate my mind reeled, it would have drowned out any conversation that took place. What was Elizabeth Meadows given? And why? Had she witnessed the murder too? And why was Curzon murdered? And what did any of this have to do with the CPM 203 that corrupted my mind? "So, what was it, doctor?" I questioned, marching into the infirmary. My entourage, Nate and Colin, followed on my heel. "CPM 203. The same drug that is in your system," replied the doctor as he headed toward the doctor on duty office. He barked, "Right now she is sleeping, but I will contact you as soon as she awakes." He slammed the door. We all exchanged astonished looks. Finally, I said, "Maybe I can get Major Ryan to program him with a better personality." The two men practically doubled over in laughter as we headed out of the infirmary. "You two think I'm joking, but I'm not. If anyone can do it, Ryan can." I stood against the wall leading away from the infirmary. "You know, I think that you may be the only one aboard this star vessel that will escape having a Swiss cheese memory." Nate slipped his arm around me, leaning against the piece of wall next to me. "Don't worry, we'll get through this. You better believe it. Even with holes in my memory, I am still way too good an agent to go out like this." The men laughed again. "Well, it's definitely good to have you back," Nate exclaimed, beaming from temple to temple. "You just haven't been acting like yourself since you lost your memory. Arrogant and cocky, that's why you love me," I replied, turned my head and kissed him on the lips. Colin cleared his throat. He leaned against the opposite wall. "So, Meadows was drugged, but for what possible reason?" Colin asked. He bent his knee, resting his foot against the corridor. I looked up at him. "That's what we have to find out," I told him, gesturing between Nate and myself. "It's time for you to step away from this." Brooklyn Curzon was a federal agent, I advised him, giving him a sad smile, "and that makes this an IIB matter." "Yes, but I am the Liberty's chief of security." "And this murder took place on the Liberty," Colin protested, making a proprietary gesture. "Maybe I am starting to experience memory loss myself," Nate started, rubbing his head. He cocked it, staring at Colin, and ventured, "I believe we discussed how if Peake and I were conducting an IIB investigation, you would stay out of it." "Yes, Jessa, Nate, but this is murder." "Listen, Colin, Jag's right. The less you know, the better. We put ourselves in danger every day. It's our jobs, but I don't think we should put yours in danger as well," I interrupted Colin, rubbing my pant leg. "Even now, sometimes my legs still hurt, if I used it too much." "If anything happened to you," I insisted, "Joey would kill us." Colin nodded slowly, then objected, "But I understand that you want to be involved, but we can't take any unnecessary risks," Nate interjected before Colin could say anything more. "Already we have one agent dead," Nate elaborated, darting his eyes from Colin to me and back again, "and another has a huge gap in her memory." Okay, but keep me apprised," Colin said as he walked away, head down. I knew he was disappointed, but I couldn't let him interfere with our investigation, no matter who he was. Investigating a murder under normal circumstances was difficult, but when our key witnesses were not functioning with all their memories intact, it was nearly impossible, which is just how I loved my cases. I loved a good challenge. Nate and I headed into a nearby travel tram. I pressed the button for my office.